Thank you. Go ahead and get roll call for the Portland Parks and Recreational Portland Parks Board, Tuesday, March 12th, 2024. Starting at 5:01 p.m. You can have roll call, Michelle.
Corbin,
Here.
Alana,
Here.
Bonnie,
Present.
Casey,
Here.
David. I see you connecting to audio, so I will mark you as here. Chris,
Here.
Adam,
Here.
Adrian. I don't see Adrian. Aaron, who is also connecting to audio. Sabrina. Allie,
Here.
Suen.
Here.
Jonathan,
Here.
Matt. Might be running late. He messaged me. Oh, I think I see him here. Patty
Here.
and Jessica. I don't see.
Everybody? That's everybody. Thank you so much. Do we have anybody, nobody in person for public comments? Do we have anybody online for public comments? If so, you can raise your hand. Looks like we don't have anybody online for public comments. Is that correct, Michelle?
No one's hands raised. No.
Great, thank you. Let's go ahead to general announcements. Do we have any general announcements? Alana, please go ahead.
I just wanted to let folks know that next meeting will be my last meeting with the board. I'll be here for another cycle of the month's work, but unfortunately we'll have to step down before the end of my term at that time. I hate when board members just disappear without saying anything though, so I wanted to make sure folks knew that.
Oh, just to say,
And it's not unfortunate.
it's
Thanks, Bonnie.
definitely a good
We're
thing.
sad to, no, never mind, I'll just keep my.
We can save goodbyes.
Yeah, okay. With that said, that means we do have a opening for the vice chair, co-chair position. Please send forward your nominations, self or otherwise, to me. And we have to do the hard task of trying to replace Alana.
And it's a fun job to be the vice chair. You get to be involved in all of the good stuff. And when something looks not as great, you just say, you know, Corbin, that looks like a great one for you.
Well, thank you for that. All right, any other announcements? Right, moving forward to approve of February's meeting minutes. Do we have any edits, additions, or a motion? Opening it up to the floor.
To approve the February meeting minutes.
We have a second,
Second.
a second by Swen. All those. Any discussion before? Moving forward to approve the minutes, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Please keep it up.
Yes.
All those against? Any abstentions?
Casey is abstaining.
Thank you so much. And we're going to go ahead and move forward to the director's report. We're a little early, starting at 5:06.
It said speak slow, but it's probably not like.
We'll probably have questions. So.
That is true. I'm just gonna focus on the government transition and a couple, 2 items, and then, of course, completely open to having any conversations about my report that was sent in advance. So in terms of the natural resource service delivery, since January, the core team has taken feedback we received from staff, advisory board members and council and incorporated it into a revised draft work plan and task list, which I included in a separate email message on March 7th. So if anybody missed that, go back to it. The revisions clarify the scope of the work plan. They also add more detail about each task, including who is responsible and expected timelines. And then a more detailed draft task list has also been developed to accompany the work plan. As stated, we hoped to hold a workshop that would include the advisory body representatives, subject matter experts, project managers, and the consultants prior to today's full board meeting, but scheduling did not allow that to happen. I also included the most recent draft work plan and task list that together with the feedback we received thus far has been further refined from the previous version we shared a few months ago. So the March 7th email has the most recent version. But just prior to today's board meeting, we held a workshop planning meeting with the advisory body representatives, including Dr. Corbin and Allie. So thank you both for your participation. They're joining advisory body peers from the Portland Utility Board and the Urban Forestry Commission, whose input will help inform the agenda for the March 22nd workshop, final work plan and task list. And they've also been invited to participate in the invitation process. So I'll just pause there for a moment, see if anyone had any questions on that item before I delve into single permitting authority. It's just getting more and more exciting. So as a part of, well, the work began several years ago. There was a permit improvement task force that was stood up by then Commissioner Ryan and Commissioner Knapp's as program area, I'm sorry, as divisions shifted, it fell under Commissioner Rubio and Commissioner Knapp's. And so this work's been happening for a long time. There has been over the years, many audits and other work that was done, assessments that have been done around the permitting process. City of Portland, none of them positive. And as a part of that, and as also as part of the government transition, there was a decision to move towards a single entity that would oversee private property development and permitting. So all bureaus who are involved in that type of development and public works regulations and permitting are moving individuals, people, positions, and resources to this new entity called the Single Permitting Authority. That will be in effect as of July 1, 2024. So that work is, we've been moving resources as a part of the requested budget. So this applies to urban forestry specifically, the Portland Water Bureau, PBOT, and the Bureau of Environmental Services. And then the Bureau of Development Services and SPA are basically the same entity. So, and so those resources from BDS will also move. So for urban forestry, we've identified 4 development tree inspector positions and 2 additional staff who will move to SPA, as well as 1 vacancy. Urban forestry has also identified and slated an additional approximate $700,000 in development permit fee revenue to move to this new entity as well. In addition, we've committed to assisting SPA, which is what we're calling it, with initial hiring and training of SPA tree related staff and their implementation of urban forest infrastructure protection and management. So that's work that Jen Cairo and Casey Jogerst and Claudio Abizano have been very closely linked to recently. The Single Permitting Authority is also looking to rename itself, not surprisingly. So there's a plan and a process underway to rename it. So those are the 2 sort of big pieces. I think the last time we met, I also mentioned that we anticipate that the that the various commissioners will likely be appointing deputy city administrators, interim deputy city administrators soon, probably within the month. And the government transition team out of the OMF, the CAO's office, will be doing some community town halls around how the new council is going to operate. And so I haven't seen any advertised yet. I do know that they are under formation. And I just really want to encourage the board to attend those. I know that the conversation around advisory bodies probably won't happen in that sort of space, but I imagine the questions and answers will be forthcoming. There'll be people in leadership at those town halls who can answer questions. So as soon as I learn anything about those, I'll be sure to let folks know. But you can sign up for email notifications for the government transition. We're so inclined.
Thank you. Open it up to the board. Questions? Well, folks are thinking about that. You want to bring something up regarding director's report about the groundbreaking at Mount Scott. So I want to thank both Patty and Aaron for attending. Thank you for representing the board that day. If you have anything to add, that'd be great. But I just wanted to put that in really quick.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. It's like almost a month ago, so it's already.
I know, it seemed, I feel like.
It was a very sweet groundbreaking. They had to stop construction while we went in there and, but it was lovely, I think.
Yeah, it was very nice. People were excited.
The weather held.
Right. Some blue sky, a little blue sky.
We still have a little sun going on. Wanted to, they do have.
Oh, yeah, Erin was there as well.
Yes, Aaron and Patty. Looks like you have Casey and then Suet.
I just kind of an update. Wonder how everything is in the aftermath of the storm damage. I know it's been a while. I know you guys did an amazing job in terms of recovery, but I'm just wondering where we are.
Yeah, thank you for that. We actually ended up extending the permit fee waiver a couple of extra weeks through March 8th. We only had maybe an additional 11 folks in that 2-week period. So I think we're pretty good there. The recovery continues. I know there's quite a bit of park work still left to do. You know, if it's not a dangerous situation, it's not really prioritized, but and certainly trees that fall in natural areas generally just stay there. Unless they are obstructing a trail or making a trail or a trailhead unsafe. And I believe we still have some facility situations, Multnomah Arts Center. I don't believe that we've got the water running yet. But we had to replace an entire system. So, so we have potable water and port sand so that we can continue programming there and staff can continue to work there. I don't know, maybe Lauren could come off or Tanya. I know that Jen said she would be joining us a little bit late. Otherwise, I'd ask her to weigh in, but maybe Tanya or Lauren has anything to share.
Yeah, sure. Just what you said, Multnomah Arts Center, we have a contractor out there right now, providing water to the building. We actually, I have completed that, I believe, but they also did an interior study and it's going to be almost $875,000 to repair all the damage inside the building from the winter storm when the water went out. Yeah, it's a lot and it's terrible. Also, as we're doing all the restroom openings of the ones, even the ones that were closed for the winter, they're also, we're finding a lot of damage in those. So no final count yet, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, as for land stewardship, again, we do the daily care and cleaning and stewardship of all of our developed parks, natural areas, trails, community gardens. As of last week, we spent 3,200 hours, labor hours, storm cleanup. We have more to do. That equates to around, we're up to close to $300,000 in terms of our work towards storm cleanup. And some of our trails are open, many of them are open. We still have some notices up on the website. And as Lauren noted, part of our work is to open up restrooms. And as we're doing that, we are finding, continue to find issues and working with Lauren's team to remedy. So we'll probably see restrooms closed longer than normal this time of year.
Good, and then Alana?
I actually have a couple of follow-up questions on this topic. One is any lesson learned from this disaster? What can we do better?
Lots of lessons learned. Actually, we're in the process of doing an after action report. Where we've pulled information from all of the divisions and created a bureau sort of report that will be shared with the Portland Bureau of Emergency Management. So there's a ton of lessons learned, but I think for us, it's in my mind, one of the things that we always have a really hard time with is getting FEMA reimbursement if it's considered if it's federally declared. And I think we need to figure out a way to more proactively document existing condition of some infrastructure when like pre-storm season. We had the same problem in New York, and people would run out like when we knew a hurricane was coming and divide the city up into, grids and literally photo document piers, bridges, paved pathways. It really actually helped us be able to recover costs in the long run. I don't know how it worked here, but that's one of the things that I've been thinking about. But I think generally just, building for resilience, just building for resilience, and also making sure that we continue to educate the public about the importance of tree canopy despite the loss, because the loss is actually like low in the grand scheme of things. It's just very traumatic, right? And very dramatic. And so that often sort of skews people's perspective in the short term. And so sort of balancing that reality with the message of the importance of tree canopy, I think is another larger sort of lesson learned. And I think we have a lot of lessons learned around about the response and communication and coordination. And we have a fairly new director and deputy director at PBAM who brought some new innovative ways to do work together that we were not used to. And there wasn't much, there wasn't enough sort of coordination early on. We fixed it, we righted the ship, but it took a few days because they were operating in a different way than we were used to. So, but yeah, so we're doing a lot of communication back about what did and didn't go wrong, what went well and what didn't go well.
I'm glad that the fee was waived. But this is not going to be a one-time thing. There will be a situation. There are trees down after the storm was over. So is that something we can actually write into like a general policy so that there isn't this kind of like, well, can you waive it? Can you not waive it? But there's some kind of pretty clear guidelines saying, yes, don't worry about it. This is going to be waived rather than case by case or season by season.
I think we prefer to sort of not go that route because it's nature, right? And because there's always many unknowns, there's just a concern that people take advantage of it. We're fairly certain that people took advantage of this opportunity in time. And just setting precedent like that is pretty risky. But we were really honestly 2 days, 3 days, we were able to make a decision to waive the permit fees, get communications done, change the website. We trained all of the customer service staff, so the folks they showed up in person. The 1900 building wasn't the only place they could go. I mean, we were able to turn it around pretty quickly. And so in my mind, that means like, if we have to do it again, we can turn it on pretty quickly. I'd rather not set precedent, because what if the criteria changes? What if it gets more severe? And then, you know, so it's just, I think it's dangerous to do that in advance.
I have another question, but it's not related to this topic, it's related to Delta Park.
Okay, so let's put a pin in that, and Alana, is this, that's going into the conversation, or are you starting a new one?
One new thing, one follow-up question to the reports that we got from staff. You want me to do that one first and hold the new topic?
Yeah, hold the new
Okay.
topic, Patty, is
I
it?
have a tree.
Well, I have one follow-up though.
So we have a follow-up
Sorry.
with Alana, and then a follow-up with Patty, and then we're gonna go back to Alana, okay? Yes, I have Sabrina on here, because
The
it's a whole different
follow-up
subject.
is just, there was a mention about repairs needed in some of the restrooms in parks. One of the biggest concerns that I hear from folks in the community, honestly, is restroom access in parks. Are the porta potties that are in some of our parks going to stay longer than they often do if some of those permanent restrooms are not able to be opened, or are we gonna have a gap where we have more parks without restroom access?
I don't think we've made a decision, but I know that we employ temporary porta sands as needed, when needed.
Yeah.
You know, so, yeah, I can't imagine that we wouldn't, I mean, the porta sands are their own problem.
Yes.
But yeah, I'd imagine that we'll keep them employed if we're unable to open bathrooms.
Yeah, I can add a little bit more to that. So the with the winterized restrooms, we do not always have portables out there. I mean, I think the legacy around that is use in the winter, and also because the way our restrooms are built, they cannot sustain cold weather, pipes freeze like we see even with milder temperatures. You know, we do use portables as much as possible. The reality, given factors in our city, is that the portables they're not a viable option, because they do not last very long. They generally get destroyed, burnt, or occupied. And so we do place portables judiciously, but it's not an overall solution. So we do understand that comes with some unmet need for access to restrooms, but we do our best.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you, Patty.
Just a question with the trees. Of course, the storm was kind of helped the tree, but has there been an assessment of why were they at end of life trees, or there wasn't maintenance over time? And, you know, would be interesting to know, like, besides soil and the wind, why did the trees fall?
Yeah, it's interesting you ask. I feel like somebody asked that question recently, but probably not in this arena. I'll see Jen's come off mute and has joined us, but we've certainly talked about learning a little bit more about this particular storm and why so many large form trees in the Southwest, et cetera, that seemingly looked healthy, like, but it's kind of anecdotal at this point. But Jen, I'll let you speak to it.
Yeah, thank you, Director Long. Can everybody hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you. I think I heard Director Long saying before that, you know, there were dramatic impacts, and it may have given the impression that there was like catastrophic tree losses. We had 770 emergency service requests and responded to all of those. And some of those have multiple trees. Some are limbs and not trees. Our total canopy in Portland is 4.2 million trees. So really, we're talking about the impacts we're seeing being less than 1% of the forest. But regarding the types of impacts we saw, we had an interesting combination of weather events. We had rain and saturated soils followed by a deep freeze, which removes some of the elasticity in wood, so the flexibility in wood, and in roots in frozen ground as well. And then we had high wind and then ice on top of that. And really the wind was the biggest factor added to trees that were in extreme cold and saturated soils, which can lead to root plate failures, which we saw frequently in the storm. The biggest thing really was the wind factor, and it was very localized. So the damage that we've seen has been concentrated in certain areas, usually at higher elevations. And as to whether there were themes around tree condition, the predominant theme really, there isn't one thing to point at. That's often the case in a storm, and it's not a species or particular species either. It's location of the trees, taller trees where the wind was strongest, higher up above the ground, and practices, maintenance practices, or the lack of maintenance in trees. A lot of the failures that we saw had to do with poor practices, such as limbing trees up too far, especially evergreen conifers. And when those lower branches are removed, it limits the tree's ability to dissipate the force of wind. It's now acting like a sail at the top with the foliage that's left catching the wind and it being like a lever in physics terms. So now it's getting wrenched out of the ground. So that's a poor practice that isn't allowed by code. We hope to do a lot of education around that and get folks in touch with good, experienced, certified arborist companies like on our local tree care provider list so that they can get those folks working on their trees. And that's the other factor, trees that haven't been maintained. We really were looking for folks to think about their trees as an asset on their property, like, for example, their heating system, where they know they need to get a professional in to help them maintain it appropriately at certain times and do the same.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board regarding this particular topic? Because I have a new list of topics coming up. All right, starting with Sabrina, I believe you had a question or wanted to ask regarding the job shadow program.
And I will
Yeah.
note that the job shadow program link is actually for employees when we send out the monthly report to the employees. So the board members probably wouldn't have had access, but you can share.
Yeah, it's an internal intranet link. That's why you didn't have access, but what we can do is we can share some information about it via email after the meeting.
Great. Anything else, Sabrina?
No, it just looked like a cool program. Just wanted to hear about it. So I'll check out the email after. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. So back to Suen.
Yeah, Delta Park,
I'm sorry?
Delta Park,
Delta.
View 1. The baseball diamond where also the Powwow Festival will be taking place. And was damaged by someone drove a truck onto the field and damaged the through the fence. And sounds just horrible. And but it sounds like the field has been at least in the process of recovering. And I don't know if the fence was also recovered or not. But my question is, it is actually basically it's the first field next to I-5. And is there a more we can do to protect that field when rather than relying on the fence, is maybe this is the place actually can put some boulders around the fence. So people should not be driving through a fence, but then at least there's something that can protect the people who are going to be on the field and not leaving it the way it is to have this kind of situation happen again, something like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, we have people driving illegally on our property all over the place, all of the time. And because we have such a prolonged wet season, it always ends up with damage. Sometimes it's even our own staff, we just can't, like, whose trucks are a little bit too wide for thin pedestrian paths and, you know, they go over the side a little bit. It happens all the time. Fortunately, our grass grows really quickly here too. My understanding is that, yes, that field has been re-sowed. And we're hopeful that it will be in good enough shape by June. That's what I read. And we have strategically placed boulders in locations at Delta already. So like if you're driving along, I can't remember the name of the street, but on either side of the swing gates where there's bollards, we have placed boulders both to keep people from parking illegally and camping in trailers, but also to keep them from coming in. So I'm not really sure where the breach was and whether or not it would be an appropriate application for that location. But I'll see if anyone else here on the line has anything to add. Tanya?
Just to emphasize, yes, this is a problem that happens all over our parks, and it's unfortunate. I do think we do have some barriers, but unfortunately it happens, and we'll work to repair it as best as possible. Generally, the turf team, and in this case, in conjunction with that athletic fields team, a Maximus team. But we can certainly look to see if there's more to do.
If I can jump in. Some of it sounds like people need some home training, but with that said, is there any programs in school, like park appreciation programs? Like, this is how you use the park, this is how you care for it? I mean, you know, I giving too much information. I dip into TikTok way too much. But there was a point about people who cut the rings on their soda, you know, the soda rings on their cans, and people who were recycling because of PSAs and things of that nature, and really getting down to the elementary schools to like train kids that become adults and learn how to appreciate their world a little bit better. I'm wondering, are there any park pride programs in schools?
Yeah, so we're not going into schools per se, doing that type of programming, but our environmental education program and our park rangers together actually do have some really great programs around being a responsible park user, and instilling you know, respect for nature. So that's how we do the work, but we're not, like, as far as I know, we're not going into schools with a particular program.
That would be a nice connection at some point, because I mean, with fences, with next to boulders, next, like, we have farm guards. I mean, like, how far do we have to go for people to understand that a fence means what it's supposed to be, right? So sorry, I had to like.
Oh, it's okay.
Ooh, okay, that's where we are. With that said, Alana, go ahead.
Schools to pools. I'm wondering if we can get an update on how it's going. There's what, a week left for the first cohort?
Yeah, Maximo.
Sure, I can give a quick update. I don't have total numbers in front of me right now, but can get those to you, but have done site visits for the locations, for all our locations that have had the initial pilot programs at each of those locations. And they've been hugely successful in terms of both participation and appreciation from the PPS staff that have brought youth to the locations, as well as very engaged participants who have been jumping into the pool and learning a whole lot of new skills, as well as the aquatic staff who have been really appreciating the opportunity to provide that further engagement and provide some more skills, as well as just opportunities of ways to not only connect further within the aquatics program, but all of our parks and recreation programmings that are available for youth. So we're tracking that closely. We'll be doing some evaluations, both with staff, with participants, as well as with the school staff, and are looking for expansion of that as we're able to carry that on past this next session.
Yeah, it looks like the winter session is ending on March 21st, and the spring session starts is from April 2nd through May 23rd. So we can find out whether or not I don't think we're expanding beyond the schools, the 6 schools right now. But we can
No,
find
not-
out from
yeah,
Nancy
go ahead.
Roth when we anticipate doing that. It really is an opt-in. You know, we thought that, well, we had a lot more interest when we first started talking about it, and I think that some schools couldn't do it scheduling wise, so we anticipate though that we'll get more.
Have you gotten any feedback from the schools just about the time commitment for students away from the classroom with transportation? Has that worked for them? Has it been disruptive, or do we not have a sense yet?
I don't know if we've had a sense, but we should probably be doing some feedback loop for this first session. It's 30 minutes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, plus about 30 minutes of travel time on either end. And we have staff who are sort of being our chaperones in the locker rooms because they were having a hard time finding teachers or coaches who are willing to do that. So we haven't heard anything yet. I think that not getting the full portfolio of or full roster of schools had more to do with the days and when we wanted to start than the time commitment. But we can dig into that a little bit more. It ends in about a week and a half. So yeah.
Yeah, and the schools that have opted in have been based on the schedule availability that they've opted in for, and they've provided the transportation. And so they've connected with us, providing those part of the resources in the partnership.
Yeah, we'll dig in and find out more. We're back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? If not, I'm going to jump in. I have a question regarding recruitment. So you're going to be hiring folks soon. And in the past, to my chagrin, we tend to talk about BIPOC and white labor recruitment. And I would love to hear the numbers disaggregated next time they come here. But I also would like to know what does retention look like amongst these groups as well? Like who stays on for how long? And how do these numbers shift over time if possible? Just asking beforehand so we can get that information once this season.
Are you interested in full-time employment or seasonal or both?
Both.
Yeah, I will say that we can certainly provide that information, but I don't know how much historical data we have, and we certainly don't have it disaggregated because well, for a long time, we didn't ask for that information because we couldn't. So I'm not really sure how far back in terms of historical data. Claudio, you look.
No, I thought the question was about recruitment, so we probably do have pretty good disaggregated data on recruitment. That's more for our users that we had that period where we stopped asking demographics.
It's not so much users of our programs, it's hiring, right?
Yeah.
Hiring practice.
So I think we typically do a pretty good demographic breakdown of applicant pool moving through. So Margaret couldn't join us today, but I'm sure she could provide some disaggregation.
Because we talked about equity and diversifying the labor pool within Parks and Recreation. We always have a good understanding of the recruitment. And this is also happens in a lot of universities. There are bells and whistles, and then you realize that the numbers not shifting because recruitment is not retaining,
Right.
The retention part it's not doing what it's doing. And so it's not mapping in the way that we want to over time. So if we can get some sort of data on that over the next season, that'd be great.
Although those people who work there left and came back, those are sweet stories.
Well, I mean, our seasonal employee program has great retention. People come back year after year or don't work for us for years and then come back, right? Or work for us and change divisions that they work in. So I mean, that's a great story. I just don't know what data we have to
You
share.
also have some full-time employees, they move on and then years later they came back.
For sure.
So capturing that would be great. Just to, make sure we're hoping to diversify the way that we're saying, so. Looking forward, Erin, looks like you have a question or a comment.
Just a really quick comment, taking us back a minute. I just want to express my appreciation to Parks for starting the Schools to Pools program. It's been a major kind of concern of mine, as many of you know, and I'm just thrilled to hear about it and to continue to hear about it during my time on the board as it kind of continues, and I'm hoping it grows. And I just want to say that, that's all.
Thank you, Erin.
Thank you. Unless there are any other questions or comments regarding the director's report, I want to move forward with the working group reports. So we are at time. Starting with the Board Affairs Working Group. Are there any comments or questions regarding the Board Affairs Working Group report? Thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions from the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group report? Thank you, David. Any comments or questions for the Community Engagement Working Group? Thank you, Sabrina. Any comments or questions regarding the Recreation, Arts, Culture, and Nature Working Group? Thank you, Adam. And then the Parks Levy Oversight Committee. Any comments or questions? Thank you again, Casey. Moving forward to the Portland Parks Foundation report. Jessica Green, are you with us?
I am here. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. I just want to share, I think I've shared this last time, but we have a couple big awards. So I guess not a couple. Our Emerging Leadership Award nomination process is open, as well as our small grant cycle. So I really encourage you, there was a report sent around maybe right before this, but encourage you to share that with your networks, please. And also just a reminder that we have our Spring Friends and Allies Summit on May 16th at the Laurelhurst Club. We'll be gathering around 200 people, and it's an opportunity to just meet more people who are committed to making our parks better. We'll be celebrating volunteers as well as emerging leader nominations at the event, and registration is open. Just a quick few updates on our current projects. The Elk Fountain, I know last time I shared we were on schedule for its return in 2024, but it looks like we're more on track for a return in 2025, mainly because of a long period for sourcing the stone, which comes out of a Vermont quarry where they are originally from, and that's a very long process. But otherwise, we're on budget and on track. And then I also just want to share the really exciting news that came through the legislative session earlier this month that, as you know, Portland Parks Foundation has partnered with the Commissioner's Office, PP&R, and the Kids Outside to do a new park design for George Park as part of our playground project campaign. And in addition to PPF's commitment for the playground replacement, as well as $3 million SDCs, the legislature has approved another $750,000 for the park for walkway improvements and lighting. So just a really amazing example of the advocacy effort by the Kids Outside team. They approached Representative Travis Nelson, and he was able to push that through. So that's really exciting news for North Portland and George Park. And those are kind of the highlights.
So much. Opening the floor to the board. Any questions or comments? Thank you so much, Jessica. So is Linda Robinson?
She is. I think I saw her.
We are very early in our meeting time.
Yes,
So Hi, Linda. Are you ready to present? How are you doing?
I can. So shall I just go ahead? I'll start by kind of telling you a little bit about who I am. I was born in Portland, grew up in Gresham, been around a long time. I've lived in outer East Portland since 1973, before we were part of Portland. I've been a park advocate since we were annexed I think Park Rose was annexed, that part of it in the late 70s or early 80s. So I recall being promised we would have city level services when we were annexed, and I've been working on that ever since. I did spend some time, I've been a park advocate, since then, 35, 40 years. I did serve 2 terms on the Portland Parks Board. I think Tanya was just coming on when I was leaving. So Gateway Green, it's a park, fairly new park in outer East Portland, actually located between the I-205 freeway and the I-84 freeway interchanges, 25.5 acre park. It's an idea that came out of the Gateway Urban Renewal process. We were talking about what we could do to make people want to come to Gateway and live and work and not just pass through on their way to Mount Hood or whatever. So it came out of that. We had a fairly long process. Part of it, a pilot project, was opened in 2017, which was 12 years later. And then the full park was completed as we were in the middle of the pandemic in late 2020. So we still have yet to have a grand opening celebration. And then shortly after that, a few months later, they closed the southern end of the park to TriMet could work on the Better Red project, the expansion of the Red Max line to 2 tracks instead of 1. So that's wrapping up and should finish in a month or 2. So we're getting ready to really activate the project. One of the good things about that project is that a part of it is we do get a new access to the park that goes along the same bridge they had to build for the Max line, and it will go more directly into the park, and it will be better lighting and better security. And the partnership between Friends of Gateway Green, or FOG, and PSU has been a long-standing one. And to start with, I worked at Portland State, was a student there and worked there full-time or part-time for maybe 17 years. And then we did the initial inventory of this property was done as a planning student project in 2006. And they did a site inventory, a very thorough, very good site inventory. Then we were involved with Portland State again on Oregon Solutions project. They worked with us for 2 years, working with the major stakeholders in this project because it involved TriMet and ODOT and PBOT and Parks and an amazing number of other people in order to make it happen. So they worked with us for 2 years. And then we applied to the planning program we felt we needed, once it was open, we really needed to know who's using the park. And even more important, who's not using the park and why they're not using the park. The concern was that we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just big boys with expensive toys from the richer parts of town coming to Gateway Green to use it. We wanted to make sure that the people who live around there were actually using it. And we had no idea. So we first tried to get it to be a project. The MERP students do a big, long project each spring, winter and spring term. We were not selected for that, but we were approached by Dr. Corbin and I suddenly forgot the name of Dr. Dill, about possibly a project for their urban analysis classes. at Portland State. And so it started out, we were just going to do the quantitative analysis in the fall, and then we added the qualitative the other way around, qualitative in the fall and quantitative in the winter. So we ended up working with them. We realized that we couldn't do as thorough a study as we had initially hoped, but we felt this would be a good pilot project, that it would develop some of the tools we might need and test some of the tools we might need to figure out, how this park is being used and who it's being used by and who it's not being used by. So we had a group of, there were 8 groups of students. There were like 20 some students. They were divided into groups of 8, and each one was assigned a neighborhood. And they did some background information on the neighborhoods, both actually going to the neighborhood, getting some demographics, things like that. They also they developed a survey, which was then applied both, it was available online. They did some door-to-door. They mailed a bunch of them out to the closest neighborhoods. They actually did some focus groups. Before they did the focus groups, they did some individuals interviews with some stakeholders in the various neighborhoods. And we picked the neighborhoods that are contiguous to the park, and there are actually a total of 8 of them. So those were where we were working with. They developed a plan to do some site observations, and to mark whether they were young or old, or boys or girls, or appeared to be boys or girls, whether they're on bicycles or not on bicycles. We ended up not being able to do that for a couple of reasons. One is that we were running out of decent weather. It was fall term. And once you leave daylight savings time, you can't really do anything after school. They found a dead body on the I-205 multi-use path, which you have to go on to get to the park. And so that kind of quashed that study. We still hope to do that someday. Then they spent some time analyzing the data and preparing reports and preparing some recommendations. So some of the recommendations, or the things that there were concerns about, a lot of safety concerns came up. Concerns not only about in the park, but getting to the park and parking in the area around the Gateway Transit Center. There's concerns about that, which still need to be addressed. I think we are addressing some of them. There were concerns stated about environmental factors, like it's kind of noisy in the process of getting from the Gateway Transit Center to the park. It's not as noisy once you get to the park, although that's being fixed a little bit by the Better Red project. It was terribly noisy. I mean, you were right next to the freeway. There was only the train track in between you and the freeway for a considerable distance. It's about a quarter-mile walk to get from the transit center to the south end of the park, but about a half-mile walk to get to the main entry of the park. So it's a park that has you don't drive up to the park, but that's one reason why part of the focus of the park is on a bike park, mountain bike park, and other kinds of biking, as bike skills area and the like. Other concerns were welcoming issues, belonging, problems of not being able to find the park. We have been working on signage. It's very complicated because you have to meet the sign standards of ODOT and TriMet and PBOT and Portland Parks, depending on where you want to place the sign and how you're coming up with a sign that meets all of those criteria. We are still working on that. Other concerns were, a lot of people made statements about it's too expensive and it takes too long to get a permit for an event at the park. So we noted those, and we will be working with Parks to see if some changes can be made. So there was also some concerns about whether people who aren't using bicycles, whether there would be bike pedestrian conflicts. Those are some of the issues that were raised. So some of the recommendations that the students came up with is improve the safety, particularly the safety on the multiple use trail getting to the park, which is an ODOT thing, but it still is an issue for users, going to Gateway Green, and maintenance of the bike trails, particularly in the wooded part. There is a contract with Northwest Trail Alliance, and I think they're working. I think they're beginning to kind of get in a rhythm of when you need to go in and clear branches from those trails, and do other kinds of maintenance of those trails. Other recommendations. Where did my other? Oh, here we are. Add more emergency signage. There's some concern that if something happens, they don't know how to tell the first responders where they are in the park. First, there's one sign I think that indicates how to contact emergency responders and park rangers and the like. But we need a way for them to say I'm in section A of the park or section C, and the first responders know what part of the park that is, because it's a long, narrow park. It's 3/4 of a mile long or longer. Other recommendations. That there be an easier way to reserve space in the park, and that maybe there's a way to do. Wondering if there's a way to just put up a canopy and have a picnic without getting a permit, because now the way it is, if you put up a canopy, you need a permit. So we're hoping to work on that issue. Affordable community-based permit system programming was suggested that we work closer with neighborhood groups to come up with additional park uses that are compatible with the mountain bike uses, and we've been working on that. So other suggestions were to maybe have a winter solstice event or a summer solstice event, a youth soapbox derby. There's quite a hill on the bike path, and would be amenable to that kind of thing. Other suggested events that bring both the biking community together with the non-biking community. There are a number of people who live in Maywood Park who walk their dogs there, for example. There are people who run there. So expand youth stewardship programs. Maybe the programs that Park has where they're training students to, maybe Gateway Green could be one of the locations where they do some work. They would like more youth rides. They would like environmental education activities. Was a question about maybe local schools could use the track. For instance, we've had inquiries from both Parkrose High School and McDaniels High School who have cross-country teams that the only place they have really to practice is a flat field next to the school, and perhaps we could encourage some use of Gateway Green so they could get the changing levels and trail conditions. Bike maintenance events for women, particularly for women and trans riders, culturally specific food events, musical events, events that include bike rentals or bikes that are available for loans, since a lot of the people who live, our big concern was that we wanted to make sure that the people who live around the park are using the park and feel comfortable in the park. And that area of town has a high percentage of BIPOC population, a high percentage of immigrant, high percentage of low income. A lot of them do not have access to bikes. That was brought up in the survey. So if there was some way that we can provide events where those are available, that would be very good. There was some question about the ADA accessibility. The multi-use path does not meet ADA standards. It was built before those were developed. The new access that's coming with the Better Red project is meets ADA standards. But the other thing is, apparently, we did make a track, an area that's specifically made for bicycles, for I'm not paralegal, but for people who are disabled and partially paralyzed. They can't get into the restroom. The restroom doors aren't wide enough. So that was an issue that came up, that really isn't used because of that. There's also a big concern that we need to add more shelter from weather, shelter from rain, and shelter from the sun. There's very little shade there. They planted a bunch of trees, but of course they're young trees still, and they don't provide much of any shade at this point. So those are expand partnerships with culturally diverse nonprofits in the community. And we have been working really hard on doing this. And we got one of the grants that Parks put out for the teen partnerships. And I love their, Megan Dirks is running that program. We are the program recipients or the grant recipients are meeting quarterly to do a lot of networking amongst themselves. And they're encouraging us to work together on events and the like. And this has been really, really helpful to establishing relationships with a lot of the other nonprofits, both arts and recreation and other kinds of leadership organizations that really focus on assisting and working with the population that lives, where a lot of them live in East Portland. So that's been really helpful. We also need better signage to get to the park, and they would love to have some more. And we had our original plans included, and we just haven't gotten there yet, some interpretive signs about the how the area is part of the Ice Age mega floods. That's how that it got carved out there. A lot of other things about some of the stormwater aspects of the project and things like that. So, and also some more signs having to do with some of the environmental education opportunities and the habitat parts of the park. So the park is about 25 acres. About 10 of it has an environmental zone on it. The environmental, not the most restrictive one, the environmental conservation zone over it. And that part of the park has some dirt trails that go through it. 3 designed for different skill levels of bicycles. And I'm not sure they've actually built the 4th one, which is a pedestrian path that goes through the wooded area. A lot of planting and the like has gone on. A lot of clearing of English ivy and blackberry has happened over the last few years and will continue. So we got these results, and they also thought we should have a bigger social media presence, which we're working on, and things that would encourage people to stay longer, which the shade and the shelter was really a big factor in that. The other thing is this new path that's being built as part of the Better Red project. The slope is better and it has resting places, including benches. We have a lot of people who bring young children down who ride on those push bikes, Well, after they're done, the parents end up carrying both the child and the push bike back up the hill because they're tired. So we are trying to make it easier for that to happen with some resting points along the way. The interesting thing with this we're really excited about that new, what we were able to get as part of the Better Red project. They had to make a new bridge that went over the freeway off ramps. And apparently federal regulations required, if they use federal money, that they had to include a bike pedestrian facility on the new bridge. So we encouraged them to make that wider, to make it wide enough that first responders can use it. Because they had to go way out of the way from 92nd and Halsey, drive along the railroad tracks for a mile or 2, cross the railroad tracks, cross back, and drive back another half mile to get to the park. That was the only way to get to the park for the wider, longer emergency vehicles. Now they will be able to go directly from the Gateway Transit Center across that bridge and into the park. So there was a lot of reluctance to encourage, big events there until we could get first responders in, and that will be available in the next few months. It's been 3 years they've been working on that project, and now we can, the bridge is done. Now we just need to finish the part that connects the bridge with the park, which is much easier and less expensive than building the bridge. So that was a big concern that we had. So let's see, what else should I say? The FOG has really, we know this was preliminary. We would like to do more studies. We would like to carry out the observation study where you actually, do the stand and watch and check whether they're using a bicycle or not, and whether they're, what part of the park they're in, and, that kind of thing. We hope to do that. We'd like to tweak the survey a little bit and apply it, give it to a lot more people, both online and in person. But in the meantime, we actually have been able to use this information that the students provided. As part of that, the board came up with a strategy for the next 2 or 3 years. One factor is we want to help people know that the park exists and how to get there. Another big part of their strategy was to hold some kind of events and some activities that make it obvious to people that this is more than just a bike park. A lot of people thought it was just a bike park and that there was no reason for them to go there if they weren't a mountain bike rider. So, we actually have scheduled an event to happen on May 4th, and we are calling it Nature Inspired Art at Gateway Green. We'll have some musical performances by young people through Friends of Noise. We'll have, we have a mobile art studio coming where they set up 3 tents and a bunch of tables and do a variety of art activities. We have a number of things like that. I've contacted the Parks Environmental Education folks, hoping that they have some kind of an art related activity that's tied to nature. I just submitted the permit application yesterday, and I tell you, it's quite a process, and getting the information needed for it was difficult to get this far in advance, for one thing. And I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed by it, but so we're doing that. We are also working on the idea of a BMX bike activity for girls in the summer. That's still in the early planning stages. Again, with the idea of helping girls be more comfortable, because the users anecdotally are primarily males, but not entirely. We have been very surprised that there are a lot more families with young children using it than we initially thought. We were told that would probably be true by other bike parks in other parts of the country, and it has proven to be true. In fact, often it's grandparents with young children who come to the park. There is an issue with if you have a handicapped adult that can't make it to the park. Well, a lot can make it to the park, getting back from the park is very difficult for some. We hope that someday, at least when we have events, we will be able to arrange for a group of pedicabs that can help people like that get to and from the park, particularly during events. So the other thing is, we had something else planned. What is it? Oh, yeah. So yeah, we also worked with, we worked very much with TriMet on their Better Red, and I'm really happy for Ross Swanson, who was the project manager, who held very firm that we must have better access as part of the Better Red project. It's interesting, they initially planned to just go right up over the middle of the park and kind of a raised thing up over the park. And they came to us and they said, well, it won't affect the park much. It'll be above the park. And one of our first questions was, but how many concrete bridge abutments will be in the park? Oh, 9 or 10. And I'm thinking that maybe concrete bridge abutments are maybe could be a problem for a bike park. It's a lot more obstacles to run into. And they were not aware, and we had been made aware during the early planning stages, that there's actually an overpass, that the hill on the south end of the park is not a real hill. It's just a pile of debris from when they were constructing the I-205 freeway, and when they were taking off the old ramps off the I-84 so that they could hook it up to the I-205. And they piled all that stuff there at the south end, including they buried a bridge overpass down under there somewhere, and it's about 80 feet deep. the debris, and they were thinking of putting their bridge supports there. Well, obviously that's not a good place to put the supports for a bridge that's going to hold up a heavy train. So they modified the design, and we worked with them. The other thing we're still trying to get from them is a better way to drop off young people and their bikes. If we have bike classes and bike camps, we will have several parents arriving at the same time. And they will all be dropping off the kids and bicycles. They made us 4 spots that you drive into and back out of. But our concern was that you're going to get a kid run over when one parent's backing out and the other parent's pulling in. So we're working to try to get a pull-through spot really close to the new transit station that they built. And they're doing some remodeling of the transit station so that parents can just pull through, drop off the kids and pull out again. And we don't have the safety issues of, 10 and 12 year olds running back and forth with bikes and cars backing in and out. So that's another issue we wanted to work on. I guess I'll just finally say that, the Friends of Gateway Green Board, we started out with 9 people. After we got the park actually approved and started and built, our numbers have dwindled down to 5, me and 5 white males. And we really need to recruit additional board members, and we would like to diversify our board. We've had a number of folks express interest, but all of them have been white male bike riders. We're hoping to get someone who's concerned about youth obesity or youth health, somebody who's concerned about environmental education. We had someone, but he left. We had someone from Audubon, but he was no longer to do it once he got married. So if any of you know someone who might be interested in being on our board, we'd really love to know about that. So I think that pretty much covers what I plan to cover. If anybody has questions or comments, and I think I did it within the time frame I was supposed to.
Thank
Corbin,
you. Thank you so
wanna
much,
add-
Linda.
Corbin, do you want to add anything?
I think you handled everything. I'll chime in if there's any questions.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Linda. So just getting, the floor is open to the board. So I saw Sue-Lin and then Alana.
When I'm on the board, I don't know if you can see me, really appreciate the level of passion, the articulation of this really very unique site. I was, when you were describing it, I've never heard of it, but I went online and then check it out. It's extremely sculptural in terms of the surround of highways and then the shape of the ground. I almost want to say it's a perfect place for some really impressive, a series of larger vertical sculptures, art, something similar to the park in Seattle. I'm sad to hear that you're actually having less and less board members. I think if you can really wound up with youth, young mountain bikers, diverse youth, have them brainstorm, need to maybe include some of the artistic, creative thinkers in building something that can be permanent, or something that you can drive along the highway. You can actually see a series of these very creative sculptural pieces. Something has to draw the eye there from afar. I think there's a lot of potential here, and I just wish you have a lot of success in rallying. Whoever is providing you some maybe design or creative ideas should be able to come up with some sketches just to say what if, why not, some vignettes that can test ideas and bring some players and fundraising. It can be an international art park that incorporates a lot of athletic presence of bike
It actually has,
community.
it actually has the possibility of having a major cyclocross event at the park.
Yeah.
And it's easily, you can easily get to it from the airport by Max, by the red line, especially now that they have 2 lines instead of 1. That there are lots of hotels right along Airport Way. And so it was designed with the idea that eventually we could have some major bike events there. We also, the southern part on the hill was closed for the construction of on the Red Max line. And now they regraded it back to where it was. And now there's some work starting, we hope in April, it's gone out for bid, to restore that part of the park, including some sort of a monument sign at the top of that hill and an overview that looks out over the park. So that's in the works. And we would, our original plan, and it still is kind of in my mind, and I won't be here forever, but because I'm getting old, but we would still love to have some sort of a connection between the park and Rocky Butte. And, most of Rocky Butte on that side is just an environmental zone, but there could be an overpass, there could be a bike path or 2, there could be a hiking trail that would be good. ODOT owns much of it, although State Parks owns a piece. ODOT's not sure how that happened. They were one unit when they bought it, and when they, as they put it, divorced, a piece of it went to State Parks and the rest of it went to ODOT. Federal government owns a small piece where they have a tower for the airport. Metro owns a piece, city owns a piece, but most of that whole east side has got an environmental zone on it, and has a lot of potential, and we'd love to eventually link them together. That's just a dream, but dreams can happen. As Ted Gilbert, who had the idea of the park actually came from a group of citizens on a community advisory committee for the Gateway Urban Renewal. And Ted Gilbert, who owns some developable property in the Gateway area, he had this idea, and I had just retired, and I said, I'll help. And that's what I've been working on for 20 years. So.
Oh, bless your heart. It's just keep your dream alive, because you have a way to capture the excitement, and don't give up.
Oh, I don't give up easily. I actually developed a life motto out of this process: patient persistence.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Suin. Alana and then Sabrina.
Yeah, Linda, thank you so much for being here with us and for all of your work in creating this space for the community. It sounds almost like it is a park. It is 2 parks in one. You have the bike park, and then you have the community users who right now at least are not using it as a bike park as much, but are using it for other purposes. And perhaps with the hiking trail that'll go in, that'll start to bridge those 2 things a little bit more. As you've talked to the community though, I'm wondering how much you've heard about an interest in the community being able to use it as a bike park, and what that would take, whether that's an affordable bike rental program right nearby within walking distance, or classes for kids with bikes that are provided, things like that, or if the community has expressed less interest in the bike park uses and more interests in how can it be more accessible for other park purposes, and which of those or both that you're hearing?
Well, actually, most people hadn't even really thought about it being anything other than a bike park. They hadn't really considered it because they just thought it was a bike park. There is some limitation in that if you don't ride a bike, it's a fairly long walk, and part of it is uphill. But so, there wasn't a lot of interest because a lot of people didn't know it existed yet. It just opened in 2020. We did the survey in late 2020, and we did the survey in early 23. but those who did talk about using it as a bike park, there was a lot expressed about not only availability of bikes, but also bike, could there be a bike station there where you could pump up your tire and do some, basic, the concern is about vandalism to such a station if it were there in an unattended area. Excuse me. Because we have had problems with not only the porta potties, but with the Portland Loo. The Portland Loo, which is there, was out of commission for months because somebody started a fire inside of it, and the loo itself was fine, but the fire got so hot it melted the plastic plumbing that was under the loo, and so some major work had to be done to make the loo usable again. So those kinds of issues keep coming up. We have looked at early on the idea of having a concessionaire there. We had a study done, but at this point, you would have to be able to guarantee enough bike rentals and sale of snacks or whatever to make it worth a concessionaire's while to make a contract to be the concessionaire. And the park needs to develop and get more use before that can happen. But I would love to see that happen where there's somebody there and attendant during the day. So
if I can add to that really quickly, I think it's a classic sense of like park activation and programming. It's one of those parks that you're not going to happen upon. It's a destination park and you have to kind of descend into it. And the first time I went there, I met Linda, and I would tell you, if I was by myself, I probably wouldn't walk down there by myself because I wouldn't know what was on the other side. Again, it was during a lot of construction. And so, and it is in a space, in a place that actually needs this green space. And so really how to activate it, have people really comfortable to even approach and descend into those parks is really important for some of the issues around vandalism. Because if it's activated, it's less likely that there are going to be people.
Well, then we found also that we found that people just can't envision what it is until they're there. And so what we realized we need to do is have some kind of an event that just brings them there, whether it's just for a picnic or something to get them on the site, and then they will see the potential and they'll see whether it can offer the kind of activity that they're interested in. But first you gotta get them there so they can see what can be done there or what kind of activity can happen there. So that's part of what we're having, the art event. We hope to have some bike rides that just take people there and back, it was part of a larger bike ride to help people see it firsthand.
Thank you, Sabrina, and then Bonnie.
Hi, yeah, thank you for this presentation. Thank you for your lifetime, commitment to East Portland. I just wanted to ask if you are connected with Bike Works by Pear. I know the bike shops and all of that is pretty non-existent in East Portland. And so I know that the Bike Works by Pear have grown and are finding a lot of success and community interested in biking, wanting bikes at a below market rate. But of course, we recognize that the infrastructure to ride your bike around East Portland is also non-existent. And so I just wanted to see if you're connected with Bike Works. I'm happy to make another connection.
I've had some connection with them. I share information with them when we have events and the like. I'm familiar with their location. They are at least 2 or 3 miles. They're out on 163rd and Stark, if I recall. It's either Gleason or Stark.
Moved into 141st, so got
right. Moved about a month closer. So it's a little out of the way to rent a bike there, though it would be nice if we could get them involved in an event and figure out how we could have that happen, like in one of the parking lots closer to where the park is. Parking has been another issue. We thought we had an arrangement with TriMet that people could use the park and ride. But there'd been a lot of turnover and people and stuff by the time it happened. And at one point they started giving warning tickets to anybody who had a bike rack on their car who was parked in the park and ride. And they decided, park and ride is for people who are coming and taking transit, not for people coming to use the park. So they can't use you know, they can't use any of the, we're trying to get them to let us at least use the surface, overflow surface parking on the weekend, which is virtually empty. They said, well, we'd have to do a study of the, you know, the use and stuff. And I said, all you have to do is use your eyes on a Saturday and there's about 5 cars, you know, a space that has maybe 75 parking spots. So, but we did, because one of the people who was on the board of the Northwest Trail Alliance works for Kroger, we have been able to get approval for people to park along the western boundary of the Fred Meyer parking lot, especially now that they closed all the entrances on the west side. So you can't even get into the building from that side. So now we did, although in January, they did hassle the Friends of Trees people and said, oh, but you're not a customer, you're not here for Fred Meyer. So we have to keep, you know, telling new people that this agreement has been made. It's been a real, you know, and at one point we had an agreement with the Oregon Clinic that if we had an event on the weekend, we could use their parking lot because every office in their building is closed on the weekend. But they got bought out by another company, and we are struggling to find out who to connect with to reinitiate that. So there's just a number of things happening that we need to deal with.
Thank you. Bonnie, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. I really appreciate all the work that you've put into this park, and all the work that you've put in for parks generally. I will say that as a person who did try to find this park shortly after it opened, I'm glad that you mentioned the partnership with, or the, you know, the relationship, whatever it is. You know, you mentioned ODOT as well as parks, but specifically TriMet, because I was looking for this park and I finally asked you know, one of the fellas who, you know, was hanging out there at the transit center. I'm like, how do I get to Great Way Green? And he's like, go down that path there, right? So I was like, oh, okay. But I feel like that is, I mean, because clearly TriMet has not only an interest in the trail that is part of this park, but also the relationship with respect to the parking, and other connectivity issues. So it seems to me, in addition to the fact that it does need signage, I think that there's an opportunity to further leverage the partnership with TriMet in some way. Not only, go ahead.
We've been trying to work on the signage issue through this Better Red project.
Right.
We had a person who was on the committee that was meeting monthly, but they haven't had a meeting for 7 months. So we are still trying to you know, see if there's some way now we only have to deal with TriMet and parks for the new path that will go from the transit station to the park, and you won't have to cross three layers of tracks to get to the path. You will get on the path before you get to the first track, which is another plus. And so I think by working, now we're down to 2 agencies, we should be able to come up with some kind of an agreement on signage that works for both parks and TriMet from that station. I mean, they should have an interest in people using TriMet to get to the park. Not many do, but they could. And if we start having events, they likely will. The other issue I had some concern about, it was a problem when we opened up the pilot project in June of 2017, was a 100-degree day, and we had about 1,000 people there. But we had some issues with TriMet, got a little bit pissed off because there were more bikes than there were hangars on the trains. And they didn't want people standing with their bikes in the aisle. So, you know, if this park picks up too much, we got to make some kind of an arrangement. Maybe some of the red trains could have additional hangars installed or something like that. I don't know.
Any other questions or statements from the board? Linda, thank you so much. I'm glad that we finally were able to have you come to present on Gateway Green. And I'm hoping that this is helpful to the board members just to see how sometimes complicated getting to a park or activating a park could be, and just talking about some community concerns. So thank you for taking the time out to present with us today. And I probably will see you out there soon. Probably picking
Yeah,
up
I don't go
trash or
out,
something.
make it there as often as I used to. I'm 80 now and getting back up that hill is a bit much. I mostly go when I can take my car in because I have to deliver supplies and I can get a permit to take my car in.
And Linda does have a bench with her name on it at Gateway Green. So apparently that's the best spot to sit at. So I will encourage everybody to go and visit it.
And there's one of the downhill lines was named after me, a downhill course that I will never, ever ride. They break both hips and my skull as well. Because I didn't learn to ride a bike until I was 65 after I started working on this project. So
Well, that's inspiring for sure. So thank you so much, Linda. And we're gonna move forward with any public comments. Anybody here for public comment? Well, with that,
We advertise 6:45 public comment. Do we need to actually break for 15 minutes and come back at 6:45 or not?
The agenda is posted on the website.
so there is an expectation that we should wait until 6:45. So we can open this up for the board if you have any other, let's say, an open forum, so to speak, of any questions, concerns, comments, maybe a second announcements or anything like that that the board has, and we'll hold this space and deal on it until 6:45. And then if there are any public comments, we'll move forward to adjourn the meeting.
I have a general question that it wasn't really an opportunity to ask. So I just noticed that this agenda, often we have the upcoming city council actions that are relevant to parks, and I noticed there weren't any. Is it that there aren't any action?
They haven't been since like end of January, and then we just got like to put on some. Add to it. So there haven't been a ton of.
So there haven't been agenda
It's been
items?
quiet.
Is that fully okay? I just wanted to clarify, and it wasn't, I guess it wasn't a big deal. Since there was space to fill.
Yeah, and actually, there's two, it wouldn't happen in time for the next board meeting, but there are two items. One is regarding Wilkes Headwaters, and then another one is still in the works, so I don't know exactly what date, but it'll be early April, and it requires a code amendment to expand the members of the Golf Advisory Committee to add a few more members.
Which advisory committee?
Golf Advisory Committee. But yeah, that's the most exciting thing that's happening at council right now.
And the Wilkes Headwaters is to accept a design bid. Yeah. I think Sabrina has her hand up.
Sabrina, please go ahead.
Yeah, I joined a little late, so I was just gonna circle back for a point of clarity. Director Long, I think you said that there was maybe in the charter, change, there were some conversations around advisory bodies that maybe we might want to be plugged into. Did you say those are like recurring meetings that are happening? Or could you maybe just repeat yourself? Because I think I came in at the latter half, or maybe that's a part of what Dr. Corbin is keeping track of on behalf of the board. Could you provide clarity?
Yeah, so the so the transition team out of the Chief Administrative Office at OMF is going to be hosting open houses and other engagement opportunities wherein they will be talking about how they envision the new council operating. So that will be a conversation about potentially them creating committees. I think anyone who's worked in other cities know that generally city council has subcommittees related to functional areas that impact the entire city. So there might be a transportation committee or safety committee, et cetera. They will also be talking about how legislation and decision-making and policies will move through council and down through the city administrator's office. And I anticipate that there might be a conversation around advisory bodies, because once we started talking about committees, there was a question of like, oh, well, will this be redundant to advisory committees or in addition to, or would it just be made up of council members? Some committees are only, the elected officials. And so I know that the board has expressed interest in knowing what the future state of advisory bodies will be. And I just anticipate that it might come up in those kind of conversations. But regardless, we get, there's newsletters that folks can sign up for. And Todd and I both attend executive leadership team meetings whereby we talk about government transition a lot. So I'm happy to share information as I get it, but I know it's just been a topic of interest. So I thought I would just let folks know that those opportunities should be forthcoming.
I actually was going to forward an invite because there were some open houses and other sessions scheduled that the Office of Community and Civic Life has invited us to, or to invited all members of advisory bodies to. This is a little bit last minute. The first one is this Thursday from 5 to 7. There's both virtual and in-person opportunities. And so I'll probably be sending this tomorrow to everyone. And so
When did they send it?
yesterday at 6 p.m.
Are you kidding me?
Great timing for our meeting.
Well, yeah, but it's not great timing when they are expecting a turnout for 3 days later. Please forward that to me. And let's make sure that they're taping. Recording.
Michelle, are you sending those dates out to the board?
Yes, they will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Since we're still holding space for a couple more minutes, I do want to remind board members that if you are interested in submitting questions or comments regarding the anti-displacement action plan for North Portland Aquatic Center, I did talk to Tom Armstrong, and he will collect those questions and then deliver a slide deck of answers if you're interested. So please forward those questions. I can also send out an email tomorrow with a deadline, and that way it might make it easier for you to submit. So if you have any of those questions still on hand.
Do you
please let
already
me know.
have a list of questions collected?
I got 0. So that is how long the list is. So maybe a nice little email out to the board will get some replies back. Opening it up to the board, any announcements or thoughts of even any future prospects as far as what you would like the board to tackle or wrestle with, or something maybe less vigorous? Any informational reports or thoughts that you would like to discuss? Sue-Ann?
It's a little bit out of context, but I saw Jen Cairo is still here. And I would like to know if you were not, when everybody is under the same group as a project going forward for permitting, is there a changing role about urban forestry regarding, because a lot of these are pecking order, like, okay, if we don't get the tree inspected, then the water cannot go on and move on to the permitting process. Is there a different kind of more collaborated, more fluid way of getting project permitted through the city system, so that it's not one has to wait for the other, that kind of time frame in this new structure?
Hi, yes, I'm still here. I
Yeah.
think you're referring to the single permitting authority that'll be.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, so a little bit of background. The Bureau of Development Services, which is the city's lead entity for private property development permitting, and the associated public works or street permitting, which is SPA's focus. Single permitting authority is only about those permit situations, private property development, and the associated public works. So BDS, a few years ago, led all of us bureaus in starting a permit improvement task force around moving those development permits faster. And one of the things that they put in place at that time, probably 3 years ago now, was they started to set some standards for how long it should take to get certain types of private property development permits, and tracking the performance of the involved bureaus, which are Bureau of Transportation, Water Bureau, a Bureau of Environmental Services, Parks, Urban Forestry, and Fire, and for fire code implementation, and the Bureau of Development Services. And urban forestry's tracking, according to BDS, 98% of the time or higher, our permits were on time in those private property development situations, documented by BDS, not by us. I want to point that out because we have prioritized private property development for all of our permitting resources for several years now, and clearly that was effective. Your question about certain steps of that private property development holding up other steps in terms of permits, that is one of the challenges that slowed permit processing identified in that permit improvement task force. And the reason the single permitting authority was created by City Council was ultimately to try to have the private property development permitting move faster. So we don't know at this point. The single permitting authority hasn't figured out or shared. I'm not sure, at least not shared. Maybe they are thinking about it. Which steps will be changing in the previous private property development permitting process, and what that process will look like starting July 1st. So we don't know that information yet.
And just very, very nudge thinking. I mean, Patty and I were like looking at each other. We're dealing with this a lot, and we thought, as much as we can make it fluid, it would be great to move parallel or in sync so that no one needs to wait for someone else to put a check mark before someone else can move forward. And that would be really great.
That would be great. That may not be possible, especially when it's public works permitting, because think of it, here's an example. The site developer wants to have a curb cut for a driveway in one location. They also have to have sewer line and water line connections. Those in part are determined by where the mains are, not entirely by where the project would like them to be. Other utilities like electric as well. And then in that case, street trees also. And some things need to be decided first before the other things can be decided. So for example, if a sewer line, those are gravity operated, so they need to be where gravity helps the sewage move. If they need to be in a location where the property owner has proposed they want some other infrastructure, their driveway perhaps, or something like that, a part of the building that is below grade, then that has to be navigated before the project can proceed. So I think it's just something to be aware of, that there are many, we're trying to incorporate many of the things that we need in an urban residence or commercial building, and that those things have to fit together correctly for all of it to work, and we get the things that we all need from property development. That said, it's been clear from the permit improvement task force work that there are efficiencies to be found. It just is a matter at this point of how the single permitting authority may activate those things and how that'll look going forward. a concern we have in urban forestry is that, you know, tree infrastructure is often not a primary consideration in those situations. And the space that street trees need and are actually required for street trees every 25 feet in the public right of way get taken up by other infrastructure that could be put elsewhere. With the single permitting authority, my team and the city forester, me, will no longer be the ones determining whether permits can be issued in those situations. It'll be the single permitting authority. So we're interested in seeing what the outcomes will be in terms of the urban canopy that we are trying to protect. So keeping the trees that are there, avoiding those conflicts that would remove them, and also adding canopy, which we all know we need in the face of urban heat island effect, heat dome, and the unfortunate deaths we saw from that, and all of the tree services that Portlanders need to have too.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just checking in.
One of those times I'm really happy with staff. I'm always happy, but I'm really happy.
So going to public comments, do we have any public comment in person? I don't believe we have anybody signed up. Do we have anybody online?
Do you have a Casey?
Mike's.
Casey.
Not for public comment. I just, the one last thing I wanted to say is that as a member of the nominating committee, remember we have we'll have applications opening for new board members by the end of the month, if not early, or probably before the next board meeting. So start thinking about friends and contacts and groups that you want to reach out to ask them to become members of the board.
Thank you, Casey. And also remember, within our bylaws, we are supposed to have a public forum. And so one of the reasons why I really want to bring Linda in is that how do we bring the public into our meetings? How do we hold space? And Alana, thank you so much, making sure that we're holding this space at the beginning and at the end of the meeting for community members to actually come and engage with us. But that said, we are heading towards, thank goodness, warmer months moving forward. And so we probably also want to think about meeting to meeting where they are at the recreation centers and start looking at that. So with that said, unless there's anything left from the board.
Really quickly,
Yes.
Casey, 2 openings this year, is that what you all are filling?
Yes.
Yes, I think that's correct. Thanks, Michelle.
2 openings. All right. All right, with that said, let's go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 6:49 p.m. Thank you so much, folks.
Where's your?
Yeah, there's that.
Next time. Take care.